You lied to me.
The thing about insurance is that everyone thinks they're covered until the moment they're not. I learned that lesson at 31, standing in my kitchen at 7 in the morning, holding a phone that had just delivered the kind of news that makes your coffee taste like battery acid. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. Tom, honey, I borrowed your car last night and got in a little accident. Vanessa's voice carried that breathy, apologetic tone she'd perfected over our 3 years together. You're not mad, right? I stared out the window of my apartment at the empty parking space where my Honda Civic should have been. The same Honda that had already been through 2 previous little accidents, courtesy of my girlfriend's driving skills. Not at all, I said, my voice flat as roadkill. Inside my head, a different conversation was playing. I hope you're not mad when you're taking the bus to work for the next month. Oh, good. I was so worried. The other driver was being such a jerk about it, like accidents happen, you know? Anyway, I'm at the police station now filling out paperwork. The tow truck already took your car to Murphy's Auto on 5th Street. Murphy's Auto. I knew Murphy's. They specialized in totaled vehicles and insurance write-offs. My stomach dropped like an elevator with cut cables. How bad is it, Vanessa? Well, she drew the word out like taffy. The front end is pretty smashed, and there might be some frame damage, but hey, that's what insurance is for, right? I closed my eyes and counted to 5. In my line of work as a claims adjuster for Northeastern Insurance, I'd seen enough accident reports to know that pretty smashed and frame damage were insurance speak for your car is now worth its weight in scrap metal. I'll be right there, I said. Actually, could you maybe come pick me up first? I'm kind of stranded here. Of course she was. I grabbed my keys to the rental car I'd been driving while my regular vehicle was supposedly getting routine maintenance. Maintenance that had apparently included a joyride with my girlfriend behind the wheel. 20 minutes later, I pulled up to the police station on Maple Street. Vanessa emerged wearing my MIT hoodie and designer jeans that cost more than my monthly grocery budget. At 29, she still had that college girl look that had first caught my attention at a friend's barbecue. Dark hair, bright smile, and the kind of confidence that came from never having to face real consequences. She slid into the passenger seat with a dramatic sigh. What a morning. Officer Williams was so sweet, though. He said these things happen all the time. What exactly happened, Vanessa? I was coming back from Tara's place around midnight, and this guy in a Mercedes just came out of nowhere at the intersection by the mall. Total blind spot situation. I knew that intersection. It had perfect visibility in all directions and was lit up like a baseball stadium. Were you on your phone? Tom, I can't believe you'd ask me that. She turned in her seat to face me, eyes wide with manufactured hurt. I'm a very careful driver. The same careful driver who'd rear-ended a minivan in a parking lot 6 months ago because she was adjusting her rearview mirror to apply lip gloss. The same careful driver who'd sideswiped a mailbox 3 months after that while texting her sister about weekend plans. We drove to Murphy's in silence, broken only by Vanessa's occasional sighs and the sound of her scrolling through her phone. The auto shop sat on a corner lot surrounded by a chain-link fence topped with razor wire. Inside the fence, dozens of mangled vehicles sat in neat rows like a cemetery for Detroit's finest. My Honda Civic sat near the front gate, and it looked like it had gone 10 rounds with a freight train. The entire front end was accordion folded back to the windshield. The driver's side door hung open at an unnatural angle, and I could see straight through to the back seat where the frame had buckled. Murphy himself emerged from the office, wiping his hands on a greasy rag. He was a thin man in his 60s with the kind of mustache that went out of style around 1987. "You Tom Hargrove?" he asked. "That's me." "Sorry about your car, son. This one's a goner. frames bent in 3 places, engine blocks cracked, and the transmission dropped out somewhere between here and the accident scene. I walked around the wreckage, taking photos with my phone. In my professional opinion, the damage was consistent with a high-speed collision, not the fender bender Vanessa had described. "What's the other vehicle look like?" I asked Murphy. "Mercedes, barely a scratch. German engineering, you know. Built like tanks." Vanessa had been examining her nails during this conversation, but now she looked up with sudden interest. "Speaking of the Mercedes, the driver gave me his card. He owns some kind of car dealership." She handed me a business card. Elliot Kramer, sales manager, Prestige Motors. The address was on the expensive side of town, where they sold cars that cost more than most people's houses. "He was actually really nice once he calmed down," Vanessa continued. "Very professional. He said his insurance would handle everything." I pocketed the card and shook hands with Murphy. "I'll be in touch about the salvage value." Back in the rental car, I did some quick mental math. My Honda had been worth maybe $8,000 before it became abstract art. My insurance deductible was $1,000. Even if everything went smoothly, I was looking at weeks of paperwork, phone calls, and the joy of car shopping on short notice. "So what's the plan?" Vanessa asked as we pulled away from Murphy's. "The plan is I file a claim with my insurance company. They investigate the accident, and eventually I get a check for whatever they decide the car was worth." "How long does that take?" "If we're lucky, 6 to 8 weeks." "Weeks?" She said it like I'd told her we'd be traveling by covered wagon. "What am I supposed to drive until then?" That stopped me cold. "What are you supposed to drive?" "Well, yeah. I mean, you've got the rental car, but I need something too. I can't take the bus to work every day. What would people think?" I pulled into the parking lot of a Dunkin' Donuts and put the car in park. This conversation required my full attention. "Vanessa, that was my car you totaled. My insurance, my payments, my registration. You don't have a car because you don't own a car." "But we're together, Tom. What's yours is mine, right?" She reached over and put her hand on my arm. "Besides, I've been thinking maybe it's time I got added to your insurance policy. You know, make it official." The coffee I'd drunk earlier was now churning in my stomach like a washing machine full of acid. "Make what official?" "Us. I mean, we've been together 3 years. I practically live at your place. It just makes sense." I looked at her sitting there in my hoodie, in my rental car, asking to be added to my insurance policy after totaling my actual car. The morning sun was streaming through the windshield, highlighting the small scar on her chin from a childhood accident she'd told me about on our second date. Back then, it had seemed charming. Now it looked like a warning label. "Let me think about it," I said. What I was actually thinking about was the conversation I'd had with my insurance agent 6 months ago, after Vanessa's second accident. He'd warned me that adding a high-risk driver to my policy would double my premiums. At the time, I'd laughed it off. Now I was wondering if my agent moonlighted as a fortune teller. I dropped Vanessa at her apartment on Elm Street, a converted Victorian house that had been chopped up into 4 units. Her place was the basement apartment, which she shared with her friend Tara when Tara wasn't crashing at whatever guy's place she'd met that week. "Call me later," Vanessa said, leaning over to kiss my cheek. "And think about what I said. About the insurance thing." I watched her walk up the cracked sidewalk to her front door, my MIT hoodie hanging loose around her shoulders. 3 years ago, I'd thought she was spontaneous and free-spirited. Now I was starting to think she was just careless and expensive. My phone buzzed with a text from my best friend, Samir. "Coffee? I've got news about the Morrison account." Samir worked in IT at Northeastern Insurance, 2 floors up from my cubicle in claims adjustment. We'd been friends since college, bonding over late-night study sessions and a shared appreciation for bad action movies. If anyone could help me figure out the insurance implications of my current situation, it was him. I texted back, "Definitely. Fairgrounds in 20 minutes. I've got news too." The fairgrounds was a coffee shop downtown that catered to the insurance and banking crowd. It was the kind of place where you could overhear million-dollar deals being negotiated at the table next to someone complaining about their latte foam art. Samir was already there when I arrived, hunched over his laptop at a corner table. At 32, he was a year older than me but looked younger, with the kind of metabolism that let him eat pizza for breakfast without consequence. His black hair was perpetually messy, and his wardrobe consisted entirely of button-down shirts and khakis that his mother bought him in bulk. "You look like hell," he said without looking up from his screen. "Vanessa totaled my car." That got his attention. He closed the laptop and leaned back in his chair. "Again?" "Third time's the charm, apparently. This time she managed to destroy the entire front end and most of the frame." Jesus. What was she driving, a tank? I filled him in on the morning's events while he nursed his coffee and made increasingly concerned faces. Samir had never been a fan of Vanessa, though he was too polite to say so directly. Instead, he'd perfected a series of subtle expressions that conveyed his disapproval without actually voicing it. "So now she wants to be added to your insurance policy," he said when I finished. "That's the plan, apparently." "Tom, you know I like to stay out of your personal life, but have you looked at your claim history lately?" I hadn't, but I could guess what it looked like. 3 accidents in 18 months, all involving the same secondary driver. Any insurance company would flag that pattern immediately. "How bad is it?" Samir pulled out his phone and opened an app. "I can access the database from here. What's your policy number?" I rattled off the numbers from memory and watched his face fall as he scrolled through the data. "Your premiums have increased 47% since Vanessa's first accident. If you add her as a primary driver, and she has another incident, you're looking at cancellation." Cancellation? As in, no insurance company in Massachusetts will touch you for at least 3 years. You'd have to go through the state's assigned risk pool, which costs about 4 times normal rates. I did some quick math in my head. 4 times my current premium would be roughly equivalent to a second rent payment every month. "There's something else," Samir said, still looking at his phone. "According to this, Vanessa isn't listed as an authorized driver on your policy." "What does that mean?" "It means technically, she's been driving without your insurance company's knowledge. If they wanted to be difficult about it, they could deny the claim entirely." The coffee shop suddenly felt too warm. I loosened my tie and tried to process what Samir was telling me. "But they won't, right? I mean, it was an accident." "Probably not. But they'll definitely require her to be added to the policy going forward, which means your rates are about to go through the roof." I stared out the window at the street where normal people were going about their normal Monday morning routines. People who probably didn't have girlfriends who treated cars like disposable commodities. "What would you do?" I asked. Samir was quiet for a long moment, typing something on his phone. "Honestly, I'd cut my losses. Remove her access to your vehicles, get your own insurance situation stabilized, and maybe suggest she get her own policy." "That sounds reasonable. The question is, will Vanessa think it's reasonable?" I thought about the conversation we'd had in the rental car, her assumption that what was mine was automatically hers, her complete lack of concern about the financial implications of her actions. Probably not. My phone buzzed with a text from Vanessa. "Talked to Tara about the car situation. She thinks you're being weird about the insurance thing. Call me." I showed the message to Samir, who read it and shook his head. "Tom, I've been your friend for 10 years. I've seen you date some questionable people, but this is different. Vanessa isn't just careless with your stuff. She's careless with your life." "What do you mean?" "I mean she's going to keep pushing boundaries until there's nothing left to push. Today it's your car insurance. Tomorrow it's your credit cards, your savings account, your mortgage. Where does it end?" I didn't have an answer for that, but I was starting to suspect that it didn't end. Not unless I made it end. My phone rang. Vanessa's name appeared on the screen, along with a photo I'd taken of her at the beach last summer. She was laughing at something off camera, her hair blowing in the wind, looking like the kind of person who'd never caused a moment's trouble in her life. I let it go to voicemail. The voicemail from Vanessa was 3 minutes of breathless explanation about how Tara's ex-boyfriend, Derek, knew someone who worked at a car rental place, and maybe I could get a discount on a second rental car until the insurance situation got sorted out. She ended with, "Just think about it, okay? We're a team." I was thinking about it, all right. I was thinking about how teams usually involved shared responsibility and mutual benefit, not one person repeatedly crashing the other person's vehicle while wearing their clothes. My cubicle at Northeastern Insurance occupied a corner spot on the 3rd floor, with a partial view of the parking lot and a full view of the break room where office gossip was dispensed, along with bad coffee. I'd been there for 6 years, working my way up from entry-level claims processor to senior adjuster. It wasn't glamorous work, but it was steady, and it had taught me how to spot patterns in human behavior. The pattern I was spotting now involved a 29-year-old office manager who seemed to believe that consequences were something that happened to other people. I pulled up Vanessa's accident history on my computer. 3 incidents in 18 months, each one progressively more expensive than the last. The first had been a simple parking lot fender bender, $200 in damage, no big deal. The second involved a stop sign, a minivan full of soccer equipment, and $800 in repairs. This latest incident was looking like it would top 5 figures once all the dust settled. More troubling was the pattern of her explanations. The parking lot accident had been caused by sun glare. The minivan incident was due to confusing traffic signals. This morning's disaster was the result of a blind spot. Never her fault, always some external factor beyond her control. My desk phone rang. "Claims adjustment, this is Tom." "Mr. Hargrove, this is Janet Morrison from Morrison's Insurance Services. I'm calling about the claim you filed this morning." Janet Morrison was a legend in the local insurance industry, a 60-year-old woman who'd built her agency from nothing and had a reputation for being tougher than a $2 steak. If she was calling personally instead of having an assistant handle it, this wasn't going to be a routine conversation. "Good afternoon, Mrs. Morrison. I was expecting to hear from someone about the claim." "Mr. Hargrove, I've been reviewing your account history, and I have some concerns. This is the 3rd major incident involving the same secondary driver in less than 2 years." "I understand that, ma'am. I know it looks bad." "It doesn't just look bad, Mr. Hargrove. It is bad. Our actuarial tables show that drivers with this pattern of claims history are 63% more likely to file additional claims within the next 12 months. I could hear papers rustling in the background. Janet Morrison was the type who still kept physical files, believing that computers were useful tools but poor substitutes for human judgment. "Now, I'm not going to deny your claim," she continued. "The accident appears to be legitimate, and you've been a customer in good standing for 8 years. But I am going to require some changes to your policy going forward." "What kind of changes?" "First, any additional drivers must be formally added to your policy with full background checks and driving record reviews. Second, your deductible is increasing to $1,500. Third, your premium is increasing by 60%, effective immediately." I felt like someone had just punched me in the financial solar plexus. 60%? "Mr. Hargrove, you're 31 years old with a clean driving record and no claims in your own name. Under normal circumstances, you'd be paying about $80 a month for full coverage. With these adjustments, your new premium will be $230 monthly." I did the math quickly. That was an extra $1,800 a year, just in insurance costs. Add in the deductible increase, and Vanessa's driving habits were now costing me over $3,000 annually. "I understand this is frustrating," Mrs. Morrison continued, "but frankly, you're lucky we're not dropping you entirely. If Miss Morales has another incident while driving your vehicle, we'll have no choice but to cancel your policy." After I hung up, I sat staring at my computer screen for 10 minutes, trying to process the conversation. $3,000 a year. That was a vacation, or a decent used car, or 6 months of groceries. It was real money, the kind that made a difference between living comfortably and living paycheck to paycheck. My cubicle neighbor, Marissa, poked her head over the partition. She was a claims processor in her mid-20s, with an encyclopedic knowledge of everyone's personal business and the discretion of a town crier. "Rough phone call?" she asked. "Insurance stuff. Nothing exciting." I heard about Vanessa's accident from my friend Kayla, who works at the police station. She said the car looked like it went through a blender. This was how information traveled in our office, through a network of friends, relatives, and acquaintances that rivaled the CIA for intelligence gathering. By tomorrow, everyone in the building would know that Tom Hargrove's girlfriend had totaled his car again. It was pretty bad, I admitted. Kayla also said Vanessa seemed really friendly with the guy who hit her, like exchanging phone numbers friendly. That stopped me. "What do you mean, friendly?" "I probably shouldn't say anything." Marissa glanced around conspiratorially, then leaned closer. But Kayla said they were talking for like 20 minutes after the police finished with the report. Very cozy conversation. I thought about the business card in my wallet. Elliot Kramer, sales manager, Prestige Motors. Very professional, according to Vanessa. Really nice once he calmed down. Did Kayla say anything else? Just that the guy was driving a demo car from his dealership, and he offered to give Vanessa a ride home, but she said she was calling you instead. I thanked Marissa and tried to focus on the stack of claim files on my desk, but my concentration was shot. The conversation with Mrs. Morrison kept replaying in my head, along with new questions about exactly how friendly Vanessa had been with Elliot Kramer. At lunch, I drove to Prestige Motors. The dealership occupied a full city block on the north side of town, all glass and chrome, and cars that cost more than most people's annual salaries. The showroom was populated with BMWs, Mercedes and Audis, arranged like jewelry in a display case. Elliot Kramer wasn't hard to find. He was exactly what central casting would order for luxury car salesmen. Mid-30s, perfectly styled hair, expensive suit, and the kind of smile that probably came with its own warranty. He was talking to a couple in their 50s, gesturing at a silver BMW sedan with the enthusiasm of a preacher at a revival meeting. I waited until he finished with his customers, then approached. "Elliot Kramer, I'm Tom Hargrove. I believe you met my girlfriend this morning." His smile faltered for just a moment before snapping back into place. "Tom? Yes. Vanessa mentioned you. Sorry about your car, man. These things happen." "So I hear. I wanted to thank you for being so understanding about the whole thing." "Hey, no problem. Accidents are part of life, right? The important thing is nobody got hurt." He seemed genuinely friendly, which somehow made me more suspicious. In my experience, people who caused 5-figure amounts of property damage weren't usually this relaxed about it. "Vanessa said you were very professional about the whole thing." "Well, I've been in the car business for 12 years. You learn to roll with the punches." He glanced at his watch, a Rolex that probably cost more than my monthly salary. "Actually, I was going to call your insurance company later today to make sure everything goes smoothly with the claim." "That's very considerate. Like I said, these things happen. No point in making it more complicated than it needs to be." We shook hands, and I headed back to my rental car. Elliot Kramer seemed like a decent enough guy, which raised the question of why Marissa's friend had gotten the impression that he and Vanessa were being cozy after the accident. My phone buzzed with another text from Vanessa. "Can you pick me up after work? Tara's car is making weird noises and I don't want to risk it." I stared at the message for a long moment. 24 hours ago, I would have automatically said yes. Now I was wondering why Vanessa's transportation problems had become my responsibility. I texted back, Can't tonight? Work stuff? Maybe take an Uber? The response came back immediately. Uber? Tom, that's like $20. I thought we were trying to save money. The irony was so thick you could spread it on toast. The woman who'd just cost me $3,000 a year in increased insurance premiums was worried about a $20 ride home. I didn't respond to the text. Instead, I drove back to the office and spent the afternoon researching auto insurance policies. What I found wasn't encouraging. Adding Vanessa to my policy as a primary driver would push my monthly premium to over $300. Keeping her as an occasional driver meant risking cancellation if she had another accident. There was a third option, though. I could remove her from my policy entirely, which would bring my rates back down to normal levels. Of course, that would also mean she couldn't legally drive any of my vehicles. At 5:30, I was packing up my desk when Marissa appeared again. Hey, did you hear about the thing with Vanessa and that car dealer? My stomach dropped. What thing? Kayla saw them having lunch together at Romano's, like an hour ago. Romano's was an upscale Italian place downtown, the kind of restaurant where lunch for two could easily hit triple digits. It was also about as far from professional insurance discussion as you could get. Are you sure it was them? Positive. Kayla was there with her boyfriend, and she recognized them both from this morning. She said they looked pretty comfortable together. I thanked Marissa and walked to my car on autopilot. My phone had 3 missed calls from Vanessa and 2 text messages. The first text said, "Where are you? I've been waiting outside my office for 20 minutes. The second text, sent 10 minutes later, said, "Never mind, got a ride. We need to talk tonight." I sat in the rental car in the parking lot, engine running, trying to decide what to do next. The smart thing would be to drive to Vanessa's apartment and have a calm, rational conversation about boundaries and financial responsibility. The human thing would be to drive to Romano's and see if she was still there with Elliot Kramer. I chose option 3. I drove home. My apartment was a 1-bedroom unit in a converted mill building, with exposed brick walls and windows that faced west toward the mountains. I'd lived there for 4 years, and it was the first place that had ever felt like home. The rent was reasonable, the neighbors were quiet, and there was a parking garage that would have protected my Honda Civic if I'd been smart enough to use it consistently. I poured myself a bourbon and sat on the couch, trying to make sense of the day's events. This morning, my biggest problem had been a totaled car and some insurance paperwork. Now I was dealing with doubled premiums, mysterious lunch dates, and the growing suspicion that my girlfriend was treating our relationship like a casualty claim, something that existed primarily to cover her losses. My phone rang at 8 o'clock. Vanessa's name appeared on the screen, along with that same photo from the beach. This time I answered. "Tom, finally, I've been trying to reach you all afternoon. I got your messages. You said you found a ride." "Yeah, about that. I need to tell you something, and I don't want you to get the wrong idea." In my experience, conversations that started with "don't get the wrong idea" were guaranteed to give you exactly the wrong idea. "I'm listening." "So you know how I met that guy Elliot this morning? The one with the Mercedes?" "I remember." "Well, he called me this afternoon to check on how I was doing after the accident. You know, like a follow-up thing. And since I was stranded at work with no ride, he offered to take me to lunch and we could discuss the insurance details." "At Romano's." There was a pause. "How did you know we went to Romano's?" "Lucky guess. What kind of insurance details require a 2-hour lunch at the most expensive restaurant in town?" "Tom, you're being paranoid. It was a business lunch. He wanted to make sure his insurance company and your insurance company were on the same page." "And that required breadsticks and wine?" "We didn't have wine. Well, I had 1 glass with lunch, but that was just to be polite. He was being so nice about the whole thing." I took a sip of bourbon and counted to 10. "Vanessa, what exactly did you discuss during this business lunch?" "Insurance stuff, mostly. He explained how these things work when it's a commercial vehicle versus a personal vehicle." Very technical. Elliot Kramer is a car salesman, not an insurance adjuster. He's also a very successful businessman who deals with insurance claims all the time. He knows way more about this stuff than either of us do. I was starting to understand why my bourbon tasted better than this conversation. What else did you talk about? Just normal stuff. He's actually really interesting. Did you know he used to race cars professionally? And he's traveled all over Europe buying vintage automobiles for collectors. Fascinating. Tom, why are you being like this? I'm trying to help with our situation, and you're acting like I did something wrong. Our situation? The car thing, the insurance thing. Elliot thinks there might be a way to minimize the impact on your premiums. Despite my better judgment, I was curious. How? Well, he knows people in the insurance industry, and he's got connections at several dealerships. He thinks he might be able to help us get a better deal on a replacement car, maybe something with lower insurance costs. And what does Elliot want in return for all this help? Tom, he's just being nice. Not everyone has ulterior motives. I finished my bourbon and considered pouring another. Vanessa, I went to see Elliot today. You what? I stopped by his dealership to thank him for being so understanding about the accident. Why would you do that without telling me? Because it was my car that got totaled, and I wanted to meet the person who totaled it. And he seemed like a decent guy. But I'm having trouble understanding why a decent guy would take someone else's girlfriend to an expensive lunch to discuss insurance details he's not qualified to explain. You're being ridiculous and possessive, and frankly, a little insulting. How am I being insulting? You're acting like I can't have a conversation with another man without there being some kind of romantic subplot. I'm not some helpless little girl, Tom. I can handle a business lunch. You're right. You're absolutely right. You can have lunch with whoever you want. Thank you. But you can't do it while driving my car, because you're no longer going to have access to my car. The silence stretched for almost 30 seconds. What do you mean? I talked to my insurance company today. My premiums are increasing by 60% because of your accidents. If you have another incident, they'll cancel my policy entirely. So, we'll add me to the policy officially. Problem solved. Adding you to the policy will cost another $100 a month. Tom, we've been together for 3 years. I think I'm worth $100 a month. It's not about what you're worth, Vanessa. It's about what I can afford. Between the premium increase, the higher deductible, and the cost of adding you as a driver, your accidents are going to cost me almost $4,000 a year. $4,000? That can't be right. I walked her through the math, explaining deductibles and risk assessments and actuarial tables. I might as well have been speaking Mandarin. But that's not fair, she said when I finished. I didn't ask for any of this to happen. You didn't ask for it, but you caused it. 3 accidents in 18 months, Vanessa. That's not bad luck. That's a pattern. So what are you saying? I'm saying you need to get your own car and your own insurance. I can't afford to subsidize your driving anymore. Subsidize? Tom, I'm your girlfriend, not some charity case. Then act like my girlfriend instead of acting like my dependent. I regretted the words as soon as they left my mouth, but it was too late to take them back. Wow, Vanessa said, her voice suddenly cold. I had no idea you felt that way. Vanessa, I didn't mean… No, I think you meant exactly what you said. You think I'm some kind of burden. That's not what I think. Then what do you think, Tom? Because from where I'm sitting, it sounds like you're more worried about money than you are about our relationship. I stared out the window at the parking lot where my Honda Civic should have been. I think I'm worried about both. Well, maybe you should figure out which one matters more to you. The line went silent. I sat on my couch for another hour, nursing a second bourbon and trying to decide if I'd just had a fight with my girlfriend or broken up with her. The distinction seemed important, but I wasn't sure why. My phone buzzed with a text from Samir. How did the insurance conversation go? I texted back, about as well as expected. Also, Vanessa had lunch with the guy who hit her. Yikes. Want to grab a beer and talk about it? Rain check. I think I need to sit with this for a while. Understood. But Tom, you did the right thing with the insurance. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise. I appreciated the support, but I wasn't convinced I'd done the right thing. I wasn't even convinced I knew what the right thing was anymore. Outside, it was starting to rain. The next morning brought the kind of weather that makes you want to stay in bed and pretend the outside world doesn't exist. Gray skies, steady rain, and the sort of bone-deep chill that seeps through windows and settles in your joints like arthritis. I hadn't heard from Vanessa since our phone call ended abruptly the night before. No texts, no voicemails, no social media activity. In the 3 years we'd been together, the longest we'd gone without contact was maybe 6 hours. This radio silence felt ominous. At the office, Marissa was practically vibrating with gossip energy. So I heard through the grapevine that Vanessa was back at Prestige Motors yesterday afternoon, she announced before I'd even settled into my cubicle. Where exactly is this grapevine located? My cousin Derek works at the tire shop next door. He saw her getting into one of their demo cars around 4 o'clock. I turned on my computer and tried to focus on the stack of claim files waiting for my attention, but my brain kept circling back to the image of Vanessa climbing into a luxury car with Elliot Kramer. Derek said she was there for like 2 hours, Marissa continued. Test driving different models, apparently. Test driving. That's what it looked like. Very thorough test driving. My desk phone rang, saving me from further updates on Vanessa's automotive adventures. Claims adjustment. This is Tom. Mr. Hargrove, this is Officer Williams from the Traffic Division. I handled the accident report yesterday morning involving your vehicle. Right. Is there a problem with the report? Not exactly a problem, but I wanted to follow up on a few details. Do you have a few minutes to come down to the station? 20 minutes later, I was sitting in a beige interview room that smelled like burnt coffee and industrial disinfectant. Officer Williams was a heavyset man in his 40s with the kind of mustache that suggested he'd joined the force sometime during the Reagan administration. Mr. Hargrove, I want to be clear that you're not in any kind of trouble here. This is just a routine follow-up on yesterday's accident. Okay. I've been reviewing the details of the incident, and there are a few things that don't quite add up. He opened a manila folder and spread several photographs across the table. They showed my Honda from various angles, along with shots of the intersection and the Mercedes. According to Miss Morales, she was traveling east on Maple Street when the Mercedes ran a red light and struck her vehicle. That's what she told me. The problem is, the damage patterns don't support that version of events. Officer Williams pointed to a photo showing the front end of my car. See how the impact zone is concentrated on the driver's side front quarter panel, and notice the angle of deformation here? I nodded, though I wasn't sure what I was supposed to be seeing. This type of damage is consistent with a vehicle that was turning left across traffic, not one that was proceeding straight through an intersection. What does that mean? It means Miss Morales was most likely making an unprotected left turn when she collided with the Mercedes, which had the right of way. I stared at the photographs, trying to process what Officer Williams was telling me. So Vanessa caused the accident? That's what the evidence suggests. There's also the matter of the traffic camera footage. There's video? The intersection of Maple and 5th has been equipped with traffic monitoring cameras for the past 6 months. I reviewed the footage this morning. Officer Williams pulled out a tablet and queued up a video file. The black and white footage showed the intersection from above, with timestamp information in the corner showing 12:23 a.m. Here's your Honda approaching the intersection from the south, he said, pointing to a small dark shape on the screen. And here's the Mercedes traveling east on Maple. I watched as my car entered the intersection, clearly attempting a left turn. The Mercedes, traveling at what appeared to be normal speed, struck it broadside. The Mercedes had a green light, Officer Williams continued. Your girlfriend ran a red arrow. I watched the footage 3 more times, hoping it would somehow change. It didn't. Why did Vanessa tell me the other driver ran the red light? That's a question you'd have to ask her, Mr. Hargrove. What I can tell you is that making a false statement on an accident report is a misdemeanor. Are you going to charge her? That depends on whether she wants to amend her statement. People get confused after accidents, especially late at night. Memory can be unreliable. Officer Williams closed the folder and leaned back in his chair. There's one more thing. The driver of the Mercedes, Mr. Kramer, has been very cooperative throughout this process. He's not interested in pressing charges or making this more complicated than it needs to be. That's generous of him. He's also asked that I pass along his contact information in case you need anything related to the insurance claim. Officer Williams handed me a business card. It was identical to the one Vanessa had given me the day before, except this one had a phone number written on the back in blue ink. He said to call him directly if you have any questions about the accident or if there's anything he can do to help. I pocketed the card and shook hands with Officer Williams. As I walked back to my rental car, I tried to make sense of what I'd just learned. Vanessa had lied about the accident, possibly committed a misdemeanor, and was now spending her afternoons test-driving cars with the man she'd hit. The man she'd hit while driving my car without permission at nearly 12:30 in the morning. I called Vanessa from the parking lot of the police station. It went straight to voicemail. Vanessa, it's Tom. I just talked to Officer Williams about the accident. We need to have a conversation. Call me back. Then I called Samir. I need a favor, I said when he answered. Name it. Can you look up the insurance claim details for my accident? Specifically, I want to know if there's been any contact between Elliot Kramer's insurance company and ours. Give me 20 minutes. I drove back to the office and tried to focus on work, but concentration was impossible. Every few minutes, I found myself checking my phone for a response from Vanessa. Nothing. Samir appeared at my cubicle at 2 o'clock with a printout and a concerned expression. We need to talk, he said. Privately. We walked to the stairwell, which was deserted except for the hum of fluorescent lights and the distant sound of traffic. Tom, there's no insurance claim from Elliot Kramer's company. What do you mean? I mean, no claim has been filed on his policy. According to our records, he's accepting full responsibility for the accident and paying for your damages out of pocket. I stared at the printout, trying to understand what I was reading. That doesn't make sense. Why would he do that? That's a very good question, especially since the police report is going to show that your girlfriend caused the accident. You know about the police report? I know Officer Williams called our claims department this morning to discuss the discrepancies in the accident report. I also know that Janet Morrison is not happy about the situation. My phone buzzed with a text from Vanessa. Can't talk now, at work. We'll call you tonight. I showed the message to Samir, who read it and shook his head. Tom, I think you need to consider the possibility that there's more going on here than just a car accident. What do you mean? I mean, a successful businessman doesn't usually offer to pay $20,000 in damages for an accident that wasn't his fault, especially when he barely knows the other driver. 20,000? That's the estimate for your car replacement plus the deductible plus incidental expenses. It's a significant amount of money. I leaned against the stairwell wall, trying to process the implications of what Samir was telling me. So what are you saying? I'm saying maybe Elliot Kramer's interest in Vanessa isn't entirely professional. And maybe Vanessa's interest in him isn't entirely about insurance claims. That would be my guess. I thought about the lunch at Romano's, the afternoons spent test-driving cars, the mysterious phone calls and text messages. The pieces were starting to form a picture I didn't want to see. What should I do? Honestly, I think you should let this play out. If Vanessa wants to spend time with someone who's willing to pay $20,000 for the privilege, that tells you everything you need to know about where her priorities are. And if I'm wrong about this, if there's an innocent explanation, then she'll call you back tonight and clear everything up. But Vanessa didn't call that night, or the next night, or the night after that. What she did do was post a series of Instagram photos showing herself at expensive restaurants, upscale bars, and what appeared to be a weekend trip to the mountains. In several of the photos, a man's hand was visible holding a wine glass or reaching for a bread basket. The hand was wearing a Rolex that looked very familiar. By Friday, the office gossip network had reached peak efficiency. Marissa's cousin Derek reported that Vanessa had been seen test driving a BMW convertible. Kayla from the police station mentioned that Vanessa and Elliot had been spotted having dinner at the country club. Someone's friend who worked at the hotel downtown swore she'd seen them checking in together on Thursday night. I was hearing about my girlfriend's activities from everyone except my girlfriend. On Friday afternoon, Janet Morrison called. "Mr. Hargrove, I wanted to give you an update on your claim. We've received payment in full from Mr. Kramer for the damages to your vehicle." He paid the entire amount? $22,418, certified check, deposited this morning. Mrs. Morrison, did Mr. Kramer's insurance company authorize this payment? That's an interesting question, Mr. Hargrove. According to our records, Mr. Kramer is handling this as a private transaction, not an insurance claim. Is that normal? It's unusual but not unheard of. Sometimes people prefer to handle these matters privately to avoid insurance complications. What kind of complications? Well, if the accident was determined to be his fault, it would affect his rates and claims history. By paying out of pocket, he avoids those issues. But what if the accident wasn't his fault? There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Mr. Hargrove, are you suggesting that Mr. Kramer wasn't responsible for this accident? I told Janet Morrison about my conversation with Officer Williams, the traffic camera footage, and the discrepancies in Vanessa's account of the incident. I see, she said when I finished. This puts things in a rather different light. How so? If Miss Morales caused the accident, then she's committed insurance fraud by filing a false claim. That's a felony in Massachusetts. What happens now? Now I have to report this information to the State Insurance Fraud Division. They'll conduct their own investigation. And Vanessa? Miss Morales will need to provide a corrected statement to the police and to our fraud investigators. If she refuses, she could face criminal charges. After I hung up, I sat in my cubicle staring at the claim file that had started this whole mess. 3 accidents in 18 months. Each one more expensive than the last, each one blamed on circumstances beyond Vanessa's control. Except now, I was wondering how many of those circumstances had actually been beyond her control. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Tom, this is Elliot Kramer. I think we should meet and discuss the situation with Vanessa. Are you free this evening?" I stared at the message for 5 minutes before responding. Romano's at 7. See you there. I spent the rest of the afternoon trying to imagine how that conversation would go. In my head, I rehearsed various scenarios, ranging from awkward but civilized to something involving thrown drinks and security guards. What I didn't expect was for Elliot Kramer to be waiting for me with an apology and a bottle of expensive wine. Romano's at 7 o'clock on a Friday night was the kind of scene that belonged in a movie about successful people making important deals. Soft lighting, white tablecloths, and the gentle murmur of conversations that probably involved more money than I made in a year. Elliot Kramer was already seated at a corner table, looking like he'd stepped out of a menswear catalog. Navy blazer, crisp white shirt, and that Rolex catching the light every time he reached for his water glass. When he saw me approach, he stood and extended his hand. "Tom, thanks for coming. I know this is an unusual situation." That's one way to put it. He gestured to the chair across from him, and I sat down, trying to read his expression. Up close, Elliot looked older than I'd initially thought, with lines around his eyes that suggested either too much sun or too much stress. His smile was still perfect, but there was something rehearsed about it. "I took the liberty of ordering a bottle of wine," he said, indicating a bottle of something Italian that probably cost more than my monthly car payment. I hope you don't mind. I don't drink wine. Of course. Let me get you something else. He signaled the waiter, who appeared with the kind of prompt attention that money tends to inspire. I ordered a bourbon, and Elliot poured himself a generous glass of the wine. So, I said, you wanted to discuss the situation with Vanessa. Right to the point, I respect that. Elliot took a sip of wine and leaned back in his chair. Tom, I want you to know that I never intended for things to get complicated. Which things would those be? The accident, obviously, the insurance situation, He paused, searching for the right word. The personal complications. My bourbon arrived, and I took a sip before responding. Elliot, let me ask you a direct question. Are you sleeping with my girlfriend? He didn't flinch, which I found more unsettling than if he'd started stammering denials. That's a fair question, and you deserve an honest answer. Yes, I am. I'd been expecting it, but hearing it confirmed still felt like getting punched in the stomach. I finished half my bourbon in one swallow. How long? Since Tuesday. The day after the accident. Yes. I signaled for another bourbon. So let me make sure I understand this timeline. Monday night, Vanessa crashes my car into yours. Tuesday, you take her to lunch. By Tuesday night, you're sleeping together. It wasn't planned, Tom. These things just happen sometimes. Do they? Look, I know how this must seem to you, but Vanessa and I connected on a level that was unexpected. Connected. She's an extraordinary woman. Intelligent, beautiful, spontaneous. She has this energy that's just magnetic. I thought about Vanessa's energy, which had cost me approximately $4,000 in the past week alone. And what about the $22,000 you paid for my car? Elliot's perfect smile faltered slightly. That's where things get complicated. I'm listening. Vanessa was worried about the insurance implications for you. She knew that another claim would cause problems with your policy, and she felt terrible about it. So terrible that she lied to the police about who caused the accident. She was confused, Tom. It was late. She was shaken up. The whole thing happened very quickly. There's video footage, Elliot. She ran a red light and hit you while you had the right of way. He was quiet for a long moment, swirling the wine in his glass. Yes, I know. And you're willing to pay $22,000 to cover up her mistake? I'm willing to pay $22,000 to help someone I care about avoid the consequences of an honest error in judgment. An honest error in judgment that constitutes insurance fraud. Only if someone presses the issue. I finished my second bourbon and considered ordering a third. The conversation was taking on a surreal quality, like negotiating with someone who lived in a completely different reality. Elliot, what exactly do you want from me? I want you to let Vanessa go. Excuse me? She's not happy, Tom. She hasn't been happy for a long time. She feels trapped in a relationship with someone who sees her as a financial liability rather than a partner. Did she tell you that? She didn't have to. It's obvious from the way she talks about your relationship. The constant worry about money, the restrictions on her freedom, the feeling that she has to ask permission for everything. I thought about the conversation we'd had 3 nights ago, when I'd told Vanessa she needed to get her own car and insurance. Had that really sounded like restrictions on her freedom? And you're offering her what, exactly? Unlimited access to your credit cards? I'm offering her a relationship with someone who appreciates her for who she is, not someone who treats her like a burden. Someone who's willing to commit felonies to make her problems disappear. Someone who's willing to take care of the woman he loves. The word loves hung in the air between us like smoke from a cigarette. I tried to imagine how someone could fall in love with a person they'd known for 4 days, then decided it was probably the same way someone could justify paying $22,000 to cover up their new girlfriend's insurance fraud. What makes you think I won't go to the police about the accident report? Because you're a decent person, Tom. And because you know that prosecuting Vanessa won't change anything that's happened between you two. It might prevent it from happening to someone else. Vanessa made a mistake. She's learned from it. There's no reason to destroy her life over one error in judgment. I looked around the restaurant at the other diners, all of whom seemed to be having normal conversations about normal problems. I wondered if any of them had ever found themselves negotiating the terms of their girlfriend's infidelity with the man she was cheating with. Let me ask you something, Elliot. What happens when Vanessa gets bored with you? When the novelty wears off and she starts looking for someone with a bigger bank account or a more expensive car? That won't happen. How can you be sure? Because I understand what she needs. Security, appreciation, someone who doesn't make her feel guilty for being who she is. And who she is, apparently, is someone who lies to police officers and commits insurance fraud. Who she is someone who made a mistake and deserves a second chance. I ordered that third bourbon and tried to process what Elliot was really offering. He would pay for the damage to my car, handle any legal complications from the accident, and take Vanessa off my hands. All I had to do was walk away and pretend none of this had ever happened. It was objectively a good deal. I would be free of a relationship that had become financially and emotionally exhausting. My insurance rates would return to normal, and I wouldn't have to deal with the drama of a messy breakup. There's just one problem, I said. What's that? I don't think Vanessa deserves a second chance. I think she deserves to face the consequences of her actions. Elliot's smile disappeared entirely. Tom, I hope you'll reconsider that position. Why? Because if you force this issue, it's going to get very unpleasant for everyone involved. Is that a threat? It's a realistic assessment of what happens when insurance fraud investigations get started. They don't just look at one incident, they look at patterns. Your girlfriend's entire accident history will be scrutinized. Every claim, every statement, every detail. And I suspect that scrutiny might reveal some uncomfortable truths about Miss Morales' relationship with the truth. I thought about Vanessa's 3 accidents, each one blamed on external circumstances, each one more expensive than the last. What would an investigation reveal about the actual causes of those incidents? You've done your research. I'm a businessman, Tom. I don't make $22,000 investments without understanding the full scope of what I'm buying. And what exactly are you buying? Peace of mind. For all of us. I finished my bourbon and stood up. I need to think about this. Of course. But Tom? Don't think too long. Vanessa is planning to move in with me this weekend. She hasn't even broken up with me yet. I think she's hoping you'll make it easy for everyone and just let her go. And if I don't? Then things get complicated. For everyone. I left Romano's with my head spinning from bourbon and the surreal nature of the conversation. Elliot Kramer was essentially offering to buy my girlfriend for $22,000, and the most disturbing part was that it seemed like a reasonable business transaction. My phone had 6 missed calls from Vanessa and a series of increasingly frantic text messages. Tom, we need to talk. I know you're mad, but please call me back. Elliot told me you two are meeting tonight. Please don't do anything crazy. Tom, I'm sorry about everything. Can we please just talk? I'm coming over. We need to sort this out. The last message had been sent 20 minutes ago. I drove home through downtown traffic, trying to figure out what I was going to say to Vanessa when she inevitably appeared at my apartment. Part of me wanted to have the mature, adult conversation about how our relationship had run its course, and we should both move on with our lives. Another part of me wanted to ask her exactly how many lies she'd told me over the past 3 years. But the part of me that had been doing math all week, calculating insurance premiums and deductibles and the cost of her carelessness, that part wanted something else entirely. That part wanted her to pay for what she'd done. Vanessa's car was in the visitor parking space when I arrived at my apartment building. She was sitting in the lobby, looking smaller and more vulnerable than I'd seen her in months. She was wearing jeans and a sweater I'd bought her for her birthday, and her hair was pulled back in a ponytail that made her look younger. "Tom," she said, standing up as I approached. "Thank God you're here. We need to talk." "Yes, we do." We rode the elevator to my floor in silence. In the confined space, I could smell her perfume, the same scent she'd been wearing the night we met 3 years ago. It occurred to me that this might be the last time I'd smell it. Inside my apartment, Vanessa sat on the couch where we'd watched movies and argued about money and made plans for a future that was apparently never going to happen. I poured myself another bourbon and sat in the chair across from her. "Tom, I know you're angry, and you have every right to be, but I need you to understand that I never meant for any of this to happen." "Which part? The accident, the lies, or the affair?" She flinched at the word affair, but didn't deny it. "All of it. None of it was planned. But it all happened anyway." "Yes. And now you're moving in with Elliot this weekend. How did you—" She stopped herself. "He told you. He told me a lot of things, including the fact that you've been lying about the accident." "Tom, I was confused. It was late. I was scared. Everything happened so fast. There's video footage, Vanessa. You ran a red light and hit him. He had the right of way." She was quiet for a long moment, staring at her hands folded in her lap. "I know," she said finally. "You know? I know I screwed up. I know I made a mistake. I know I should have told the truth from the beginning. So why didn't you?" "Because I was afraid of what would happen to you. Your insurance rates, your policy, all of it. I knew another accident would cause problems, and I couldn't stand the thought of making your life more difficult. So instead, you committed insurance fraud." "I made a mistake." "No, Vanessa. A mistake is forgetting to signal before you change lanes. A mistake is parking in the wrong space. Lying to police officers and insurance companies isn't a mistake. It's a crime. And now Elliot's fixing it. Elliot's covering it up. There's a difference." She looked up at me with tears in her eyes. "Tom, what do you want me to do? I can't change what happened. I can't take back the accident or the lies or any of it. All I can do is try to move forward." "With Elliot?" "Yes, with Elliot. The man you've known for 4 days. Sometimes you just know, Tom. Sometimes you meet someone and everything just clicks. Like it clicked with us 3 years ago? That was different." "How?" "Because we were different people then. We wanted different things. What do you want now?" "I want to be with someone who doesn't make me feel guilty for existing. Someone who doesn't treat every mistake like a catastrophe. Someone who can afford to take care of me without resenting it. Someone who's willing to pay $22,000 to make your problems disappear. Someone who loves me enough to want to protect me." I finished my bourbon and set the glass on the coffee table between us. "Vanessa, do you have any idea what you've cost me over the past 3 years?" "Tom, please don't." "No, I want you to hear this. 3 accidents, thousands of dollars in increased premiums, countless hours dealing with insurance companies and repair shops and police reports. And that's just the financial cost. I know I've been expensive. You've been more than expensive. You've been reckless and careless and completely indifferent to the consequences of your actions. That's not fair, isn't it? When was the last time you paid for one of your mistakes? When was the last time you faced any real consequences for anything? I'm facing consequences now. No, you're not. You're moving in with a millionaire who's willing to buy you out of trouble. That's not consequences. That's winning the lottery." Vanessa stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the parking lot where my Honda Civic should have been. "So, what happens now?" she asked. "Now you pack your things and move in with Elliot, and I decide whether or not to report your insurance fraud to the state investigators." "You wouldn't do that?" "Wouldn't I?" She turned around to face me, and for the first time since I'd known her, she looked genuinely afraid. "Tom, if you report this, It could ruin my life. Maybe your life needs to be ruined. That's cruel. Is it? Or is it just fair? We stared at each other across the room, and I could see her calculating, trying to figure out if I was bluffing. The truth was, I wasn't sure myself. Part of me wanted to let her go and never think about any of this again. But another part, the part that had been paying for her mistakes for 3 years, wanted to see what would happen if she finally had to face the music. "Tom," she said finally, "if you love me at all, you'll let this go. If you loved me at all, you wouldn't have cheated on me with the man who totaled my car. I didn't plan for this to happen. But you're not sorry it did." She was quiet for a long moment. "No," she said finally. "I'm not sorry." "Then we have nothing left to talk about." Vanessa gathered her things, a few clothes she'd left at my apartment, some books, a toothbrush from the bathroom, and packed them into the overnight bag she'd brought. It took less than 10 minutes to erase 3 years of cohabitation. At the door, she turned back to me one last time. "Tom, please, don't make this harder than it has to be. Have a nice life, Vanessa." After she left, I sat in my quiet apartment and tried to figure out how I felt. Relieved, certainly. Angry, definitely. But there was something else, something that felt like unfinished business. I picked up my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found the number for the state insurance fraud hotline. Then I set the phone down and poured myself one more bourbon. Some decisions, I realized, were too important to make while drunk. Saturday morning arrived with the kind of crystalline clarity that makes you realize how cloudy your thinking has been. I woke up on my couch at 6 a.m. with a bourbon headache and the absolute certainty that Vanessa Morales was about to learn what consequences actually felt like. I made coffee, took a shower, and called the Massachusetts Insurance Fraud Bureau. "Fraud hotline, this is Detective Sarah Chen." "Detective Chen, my name is Tom Hargrove. I need to report insurance fraud involving a motor vehicle accident." "I can take your information, Mr. Hargrove. Can you give me the basic details?" I walked Detective Chen through the timeline: the accident, Vanessa's false statement to police, the video evidence contradicting her story, and Elliot Kramer's suspicious offer to pay damages for an accident he didn't cause. "And you're certain about the video evidence?" "I saw it myself at the police station. Officer Williams has the footage." "Mr. Hargrove, I have to ask, what's your relationship to Miss Morales?" "She's my ex-girlfriend as of last night." "I see. And you understand that filing a false fraud report is itself a crime?" "I understand. Everything I've told you is true." "All right. I'm going to open a case file and assign an investigator. Someone will contact you within 48 hours. After I hung up, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months: peace. For the first time since I'd known Vanessa, her problems were going to be someone else's responsibility. My phone rang 20 minutes later. Elliot Kramer's name appeared on the screen. "Tom, we need to talk. I think we covered everything last night. Vanessa told me about your conversation. I'm hoping we can reach some kind of understanding." "What kind of understanding?" "The kind where everyone walks away from this situation without anyone's life being destroyed." "I'm walking away, Elliot. Vanessa's the one with the problem. Tom, if you pursue this fraud investigation, it's going to hurt a lot of people. It's going to hurt Vanessa. I'm fine with that. It's going to hurt you too." Something in his tone made me pay attention. "How's that?" "Insurance fraud investigations are thorough, Tom. They look at everyone involved in the incident, including you." "I wasn't even in the car." "No, but you were the policyholder, and you allowed an unauthorized driver to operate your vehicle repeatedly. That raises questions about your own culpability." I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the October weather. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that insurance companies don't like policyholders who can't control access to their vehicles. It suggests poor risk management, the kind of poor risk management that can result in policy cancellation." "You're bluffing." "Am I?" "Tom, I've been in the luxury car business for 12 years. I deal with insurance companies every day. I know how these investigations work. And? And I know that when they start digging into your claim history, they're going to find 3 accidents in 18 months, all involving the same unauthorized driver. They're going to wonder why you didn't take steps to prevent future incidents after the first accident. Or the second. I sat down heavily on my couch. They can't hold me responsible for Vanessa's driving. They can hold you responsible for giving her access to your vehicle after she'd already demonstrated that she was a high-risk driver. That's not fair. Fair doesn't matter, Tom. Policy language matters, and I guarantee your policy has language about unauthorized drivers and reasonable precautions. I found my insurance policy in the kitchen drawer and started flipping through pages of fine print. Buried in section 4.2.7 was a paragraph about reasonable steps to prevent unauthorized use by high-risk individuals. Found it, didn't you? Elliot said. This is extortion. This is business. I'm trying to protect everyone involved, including you. By covering up a crime. By resolving a complicated situation in a way that doesn't destroy anyone's life. I closed the policy document and tried to think clearly. If Elliot was right about the insurance implications, reporting Vanessa's fraud could end up costing me my own coverage. Without insurance, I couldn't drive, couldn't work, couldn't function as a normal adult in Massachusetts. What exactly are you proposing? I'm proposing that we stick with the original arrangement. I pay for your car, you let Vanessa go, and everyone moves on with their lives. And if I don't agree? Then we all go down together. Vanessa gets charged with fraud, you lose your insurance, and I get investigated for attempting to cover up an accident. You'd be willing to risk that? For Vanessa? Yes. I thought about Detective Chen, who was probably already starting her investigation. I thought about Janet Morrison, who would have to answer questions about my claim history. I thought about my job, my apartment, my carefully constructed adult life that was suddenly balanced on the edge of a cliff. I need time to think about this. You have until Monday morning. After that, Vanessa's moving forward with amending her statement to the police. Amending it how? She's going to tell them she was confused about the details of the accident, but after thinking about it more clearly, she remembers that she may have been at fault. And the fraud investigation? What fraud investigation? If she corrects her statement voluntarily, there's no fraud. Just an honest mistake that got corrected. That's not how it works, Elliot. That's exactly how it works, Tom. The only reason there's a fraud case is because someone reported it. If that someone decides not to cooperate with the investigation, the case goes away. After I hung up, I sat in my apartment trying to figure out how I'd ended up in a situation where doing the right thing would destroy my life while doing nothing would let Vanessa escape consequences once again. My phone buzzed with a text from Samir. Coffee? I heard through the office grapevine that you had an interesting weekend. We met at Fairgrounds, where Samir listened to my story with increasing disbelief. Let me make sure I understand this, he said when I finished. Vanessa cheated on you with the guy she hit with your car, and now he's threatening to destroy your insurance coverage if you report her for fraud? That's the situation. And you're actually considering backing down? I'm considering not destroying my own life to get revenge on my ex-girlfriend. Tom, this is insane. You can't let them blackmail you. It's not blackmail. It's just complicated. It's not complicated. It's simple. Vanessa committed a crime, and she should face the consequences. Even if those consequences include me losing my insurance and possibly my job? Samir was quiet for a moment, stirring his coffee and thinking. What if there was a way to make sure the consequences only fell on the people who deserved them? What do you mean? I mean, what if we could find a way to make this backfire on Elliot instead of you? How? By making sure the insurance investigation focuses on the right target. Samir pulled out his phone and started typing. What are you doing? Research. If Elliot Kramer is willing to pay $22,000 to cover up an accident, I want to know why. He spent the next 20 minutes scrolling through various websites, making notes on a napkin. Tom, did you know that Elliot Kramer has been involved in 3 other unusual insurance settlements in the past 2 years? What do you mean, unusual? I mean situations where he paid out of pocket for accidents that weren't clearly his fault, involving female drivers under 30. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. Are you saying what I think you're saying? I'm saying maybe Elliot Kramer has a pattern of using his money to get involved with women who are in vulnerable situations. That's a serious accusation. It's a serious pattern. Look at this. Samir showed me his phone screen, which displayed a local news article from 8 months ago. The headline read, "Local businessman settles traffic dispute privately." Jennifer Walsh, 26, rear-ended Elliot Kramer's Mercedes at a downtown intersection. He paid for all damages and declined to file an insurance claim. 2 weeks later, Jennifer Walsh moved in with him. That could be a coincidence. Could be, but look at this one. Another article from 14 months ago. Private settlement avoids court battle. This time, it was Amanda Torres, 28, who had sideswiped Elliot's car in a parking garage. Same outcome, private payment, no insurance claim, and Amanda Torres was photographed with Elliot at a charity gala 6 weeks later. 3 women in 2 years, Tom, all young, all involved in accidents with Elliot, all of whom ended up in relationships with him after he paid their damages. I stared at the articles, trying to process what Samir was showing me. You think he's deliberately getting into accidents? I think he's deliberately targeting women who get into accidents. Think about it. What kind of person is most vulnerable to this approach? Someone who's just caused expensive damage, who's worried about insurance consequences, who's grateful to anyone willing to make the problem go away. Someone like Vanessa. Someone exactly like Vanessa. I thought about Elliot's perfect smile, his expensive clothes, his willingness to pay $22,000 for a woman he'd known for 4 days. What had seemed like impulsive generosity was starting to look like a calculated business model. Samir, what are you suggesting we do with this information? I'm suggesting we give Detective Chen something more interesting to investigate than your girlfriend's traffic accident. Such as a pattern of insurance fraud involving a wealthy businessman who may be using staged accidents to meet women. We don't know the accidents were staged. We don't know they weren't. And if Detective Chen starts looking into Elliot's history, she might find some very interesting patterns. I thought about the conversation I'd had with Elliot the night before, his confidence that he could manipulate the investigation, his certainty that he understood how insurance companies worked. There's one problem with this plan, I said. What's that? If we're wrong about Elliot, and this backfires, I'm still the one who ends up losing everything. Tom, you're going to lose everything anyway if you let them blackmail you. At least this way, you go down fighting. My phone buzzed with a text from Vanessa. Tom, please reconsider. This doesn't have to end badly for anyone. I showed the message to Samir, who read it and shook his head. She still doesn't get it, does she? Get what? That this isn't about her anymore. This is about whether you're going to let people like her and Elliot walk all over you for the rest of your life. I thought about the past 3 years, the accidents and excuses and endless drama. I thought about the insurance premiums and deductibles and the constant stress of never knowing when the next crisis would hit. You're right, I said. So, what are we going to do? I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found Detective Chen's number. We're going to give Detective Chen some additional information about her investigation, such as the fact that Elliot Kramer may have been running this scam for years, and Vanessa might not be a perpetrator so much as another victim. You think she's a victim? I think she's an idiot, but I also think Elliot saw her coming from a mile away. I dialed Detective Chen's number, and she answered on the second ring. Detective Chen, this is Tom Hargrove. I called yesterday about the insurance fraud case. Yes, Mr. Hargrove. What can I do for you? I have some additional information that might be relevant to your investigation. I'm listening. I told Detective Chen about Elliot's pattern of private settlements, the 3 other women, and his threats about my insurance coverage. Mr. Hargrove, are you suggesting that Mr. Kramer is deliberately targeting women involved in traffic accidents? I'm suggesting that might be worth investigating. It certainly is. Can you forward me the information your friend found about the other incidents? Absolutely. And Mr. Hargrove, don't worry about your insurance coverage. If Mr. Kramer is running some kind of scam, threatening witnesses would be another crime we could charge him with. After I hung up, Samir raised his coffee cup in a mock toast. To consequences, he said. To consequences, I agreed. For the first time in years, I was looking forward to Monday morning. Monday morning brought Detective Chen to my office at 9 a.m. sharp, along with a briefcase full of questions and a digital recorder that she placed on my desk like a small black promise. Mr. Hargrove, I've spent the weekend reviewing the information you provided, and I have to say, this case has become significantly more interesting. How so? We've identified 4 additional women who had similar experiences with Mr. Kramer over the past 3 years. Traffic accidents followed by private settlements, followed by romantic relationships that ended badly. Ended badly how? Restraining orders mostly. It seems Mr. Kramer has difficulty accepting when these relationships run their course. Detective Chen opened her briefcase and pulled out a stack of police reports. Jennifer Walsh filed for a restraining order after Elliot refused to stop calling her workplace. Amanda Torres had to change her phone number twice. Rebecca Martinez moved to another state. I thought about Vanessa, who had seemed so confident about her new relationship just days ago. Have you spoken to any of these women? I've spoken to all of them. They're very interested in cooperating with our investigation. What exactly are you investigating now? Insurance fraud, witness intimidation, and possibly stalking. We're also looking into whether any of these accidents were staged. Staged how? Mr. Kramer drives luxury vehicles with excellent safety ratings and comprehensive insurance coverage. He can afford minor accidents. Young women driving older cars with minimal insurance cannot. It's an effective way to create vulnerability. Detective Chen turned on her recorder and leaned forward. Mr. Hargrove, I need you to tell me everything about your interactions with Elliot Kramer, starting from the beginning. I spent an hour walking Detective Chen through the timeline, the accident, the lunch at Romano's, Elliot's offer to pay damages, his threats about my insurance coverage, and his certainty that he could manipulate the investigation. Has Miss Morales contacted you since Friday night? Several text messages. She wants me to drop the fraud report. And Mr. Kramer? He called yesterday morning to remind me about his Monday timeline. What timeline? He said if I didn't agree to drop the investigation by today, Vanessa would amend her statement to the police and claim the accident was her fault. Detective Chen smiled for the first time since she'd arrived. That would be very convenient for our case. How so? If Miss Morales amends her statement now, after we've opened a fraud investigation, it looks like witness tampering. And if she amends it to accept responsibility for an accident that we suspect was staged, it gives us leverage to get her cooperation against Mr. Kramer. You think Elliot staged the accident? I think Elliot Kramer has been running a sophisticated operation targeting vulnerable women, and your girlfriend was just his latest mark. My phone rang. Elliot's name appeared on the screen. Answer it, Detective Chen said. But don't tell him I'm here. I answered the call and put it on speaker. Tom, I hope you've had time to think about our conversation. I've thought about it. And I've decided that Vanessa needs to face the consequences of her actions. There was a long pause. Tom, I really hoped we could resolve this amicably. So did I. You understand that this is going to be very unpleasant for everyone involved? I understand that you've been threatening me, and I don't respond well to threats. I'm not threatening anyone. I'm simply explaining the reality of the situation. The reality is that Vanessa committed insurance fraud, and you're trying to cover it up. The reality is that you're about to destroy your own life out of spite. Detective Chen was taking notes furiously, underlining certain phrases. Elliot, let me ask you something. How many other women have you helped out of similar situations? Another long pause. I don't know what you mean. Jennifer Walsh, Amanda Torres, Rebecca Martinez. Should I continue? Tom, I think you're confused about... I'm not confused about anything. I know exactly what you've been doing. And what is it you think I've been doing? I think you've been using traffic accidents as a way to meet vulnerable women. I think you've been manipulating insurance claims to create dependency. And I think Vanessa is just your latest victim. That's a very serious accusation. It's about to become a very serious investigation. The line went silent. Detective Chen turned off her recorder and smiled. Mr. Hargrove, thank you for your cooperation. That conversation was very helpful. What happens now? Now we bring in Miss Morales and Mr. Kramer for questioning, separately. And my insurance situation will be completely protected. You're a witness in a criminal investigation now. Any attempt to retaliate against you would be another crime. After Detective Chen left, I tried to focus on my regular work, but concentration was impossible. Every few minutes, my phone buzzed with text messages from Vanessa. Tom, what did you do? The police want to talk to me. Elliot says you've made everything worse. Please call me back. Tom, I'm scared. I didn't respond to any of them. At lunch, Samir appeared at my cubicle with sandwiches and an expression of barely contained excitement. So, how did it go with Detective Chen? Better than expected. Apparently, Elliot's been running this scam for years. I knew it. There was something about that guy that seemed too smooth. She thinks Vanessa might actually be more of a victim than a perpetrator. Do you believe that? I thought about Vanessa's 3 accidents, her casual relationship with the truth, her complete lack of concern about the financial consequences of her actions. I think Vanessa is responsible for her own choices, but I also think Elliot saw her coming from a mile away. So what happens to her? That depends on how much she cooperates with the investigation. My phone rang. This time it was Vanessa calling. Tom, please, I need to talk to you. There's nothing to talk about, Vanessa. The police want me to come in for questioning this afternoon. They're saying I might be charged with fraud. You committed fraud. Tom, I was scared and confused. I made a mistake. You made several mistakes. The fraud was just the most recent one. What do you want me to do? I want you to tell the truth, for once. And if I do that, will you help me? Help you how? Talk to the police. Explain that I'm not a criminal, just someone who made bad choices. I looked at Samir, who was shaking his head vigorously. Vanessa, I can't help you anymore. You need to take responsibility for your own actions. Tom, please. I know I hurt you, but we were together for 3 years. That has to count for something. It does count for something. It counts for 3 years of me cleaning up your messes and paying for your mistakes. I'm done. So you're just going to let them destroy my life? I'm going to let you face the consequences of your choices. There's a difference. Tom, I love you. No, you don't. You love the idea of someone taking care of you. But that's not love, Vanessa. That's dependency. That's not fair. Fair is you getting your own car insurance 3 years ago. Fair is you telling the truth about the accident. Fair is you not cheating on me with the guy you hit with my car. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. But you're not sorry it did. You told me that yourself. The line was quiet for a long moment. Tom, If I cooperate with the police about Elliot, will you consider giving us another chance? There is no us, Vanessa. There hasn't been an us for a long time. I just didn't want to admit it. So that's it? 3 years, and you're just throwing it all away? I'm not throwing anything away. I'm finally stopping you from throwing my life away. After I hung up, Samir clapped slowly. That was brutal. That was necessary. How do you feel? I thought about it for a moment. Lighter, like I've been carrying something heavy for years and finally put it down. No regrets? About ending the relationship? No. About how long it took me to end it? Definitely. My phone buzzed with one final text from Vanessa. I hope you're happy. I was, actually. For the first time in months, I was genuinely happy. Detective Chen called at 4 o'clock. Mr. Hargrove, I wanted to give you an update on the investigation. What did you find out? Miss Morales has agreed to cooperate fully with our investigation in exchange for reduced charges. She's providing detailed information about Mr. Kramer's methods and his relationships with other women. And Elliot? Mr. Kramer has been arrested on charges of insurance fraud, witness intimidation, and stalking. We found evidence in his apartment suggesting that he's been systematically targeting women involved in traffic accidents for the past 4 years. Evidence? Photos, personal information, financial records. He kept very detailed files on his targets. I felt sick thinking about Vanessa's information in one of those files, her vulnerabilities cataloged and analyzed. What happens to Vanessa? She'll plead guilty to filing a false police report, which is a misdemeanor. She'll pay a fine, do community service, and be on probation for a year. But she won't face felony fraud charges. And my insurance? Your insurance company has been notified that you were the victim of a criminal scheme. Your rates will return to normal, and there will be no negative impact on your coverage. After Detective Chen hung up, I sat in my cubicle trying to process the fact that it was over. Vanessa was out of my life, Elliot was in jail, and I was free to start over without the constant stress of wondering when the next crisis would hit. Marissa appeared at my cubicle with her usual impeccable timing. So I heard Vanessa got arrested. Where did you hear that? My friend Kayla at the police station. She said it was quite a scene, lots of crying and drama. I'm sure it was. She also said there were 3 other women there giving statements about the same guy. Apparently he's been busy. Tom, can I ask you something? Sure. Are you okay? I mean, I know you and Vanessa were together for a long time. I thought about the question seriously. Was I okay? I was single for the first time in 3 years. My car was totaled. My ex-girlfriend was facing criminal charges. My apartment felt empty and quiet. Yeah, I said. I think I'm more than okay. Good, because honestly, most of us thought she was bad news. Most of you? Everyone in the office. We just didn't want to say anything. Why not? Because you seemed happy. Or at least, you seemed like you thought you were happy. I considered that distinction. Had I been happy, or had I just been comfortable with being unhappy? Marissa, can I ask you something? Sure. How long did you know she was cheating on me? Marissa looked uncomfortable. Tom, I don't think... How long? Kayla saw her with different guys a few times over the past year, but we didn't know if you had some kind of arrangement or if you were on a break, or what. A few times? Tom, I really don't think you want to know the details. She was right. I didn't want to know the details. What I wanted to know was why I'd been so blind to what everyone else could apparently see. Thanks for not saying anything, I said. Thanks for finally doing something about it. That evening, I drove to the Honda dealership to look at replacement cars. The salesman, a friendly guy named Mike, walked me through various options while I tried to figure out what I actually wanted. What happened to your last car? He asked. My girlfriend totaled it. Ouch. Is she going to be driving the new one too? No, I said. She's not going to be doing anything with the new one. Ah, in that case, let me show you something with a little more personality. He led me to a red Civic C with a manual transmission and a sport suspension. It was the kind of car I would have bought 3 years ago, before I started making decisions based on what would be practical for someone else. "What do you think?" Mike asked. I thought about Vanessa, who had never learned to drive a stick shift. I thought about the insurance premiums that would now reflect only my driving record. I thought about the fact that I would never again have to worry about someone else crashing my car. "I think it's perfect," I said. 2 hours later, I drove home in my new car, windows down, music loud, feeling like I'd just been released from prison. My phone had 17 missed calls from a number I didn't recognize. Probably Vanessa calling from jail or a lawyer's office or wherever people called from when their carefully constructed lies finally collapsed. I didn't return the calls. Instead, I went home, poured myself a bourbon, and sat on my couch in the quiet apartment that was finally, completely mine. Tomorrow, I would start figuring out what I actually wanted my life to look like. Tonight, I was just going to enjoy the silence. My phone buzzed with one last text from Vanessa's number. "Tom, this is Elliot. You have no idea what you've done." I looked at the message for a long moment, then blocked the number and deleted the conversation thread. Some people, I realized, never learned when to stop talking. Outside, it was starting to rain again, but this time I didn't mind. Rain was just weather, not a metaphor for my life falling apart. My car was in the garage, safe and dry. My insurance was paid up and back to normal rates. My apartment was quiet and peaceful. For the first time in 3 years, everything that could go wrong with my life was completely under my control. I finished my bourbon, turned off the lights, and went to bed. In the morning, I would wake up to a life that belonged entirely to me. No one else's problems, no one else's crises, no one else's consequences to manage. It was, I thought as I fell asleep, the best insurance policy I'd ever had.